and Turkey's role as a mediator. We are also going to examine the impact of regional institutions and the potential for leveraging human capital to achieve sustainable development and stability. Kindly, let's have our seats as we begin the conversation. Thank you. The first question would go to Ali Mohammed Omar, the State Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Federal Republic of Somalia. Would like to know how can Turkey's mediation efforts between Somalia and Ethiopia contribute to long-term conflict resolution and regional stability?
Thank you very much, TRT and Antalya Development Forum. Somalia deeply values the partnership of Turkey, a nation which has a significant and constructive presence in our region. Somalia appreciates Turkey's offer to mediate the friction that has existed in 2024 between Somalia and our neighbor Ethiopia. That Turkey's offer was accepted by both countries. Turkey has a very deep relationship on both Somalia and Ethiopia, and it is involvement in this was welcome on both countries. And at the end, it brings a lasting agreement in December 11, 2024. Since then, we had very good engagement between Somalia and Ethiopia. So Turkish engagement in the region of both countries, Somalia and Ethiopia, have seen as a positive. And stable Somalia is good for Ethiopia, and stable Ethiopia is also good for Somalia. And also stable Somalia and Ethiopia are good for the region and for the businesses and also for our people. So we are very happy to have seen Turkish engagement in the region. It ended into a positive, and we hope that will continue to create a positive, conducive environment for prosperity on both nations.
Thank you. And this next question that I'm about to ask, it would be good if the Executive Director of Intergovernmental Authority on IGAD responds to it. Because how can regional cooperation and institutions like IGAD effectively address the underlying drivers of conflict in the Horn of Africa?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon all. Just to follow up what the State Minister of Republic of Somalia has said, I also want to commend the role of Turkey, which really has culminated the tension between the two sisterly countries. And I want to note very important key points about mediation. We are doing a lot of mediations in all areas. For the key for mediation is a trust. And there should be no conflict of interest. Because the mediation of Turkey in that specific tension has culminated with success because of the trust that country have with the region, and specifically with these two countries. IGAD as a regional organization has mediated a lot of list of conflicts in the region, including the South Sudan, Somalia before, and also now we are trying to mediate the challenges that we are facing. Number one, we have a mechanism which is very clear and an architecture of the IGAD mechanism that is conflict and early warning system that we have. We try to alert the member states before something is happening, especially in the border areas. The second point is the Center for Excellence of Countering Extremism, which is we work on the uses, which are very much susceptible for any kind of extreme activities. as you know, that most of the people from the region and from the continent is youth, and also from that, most of them, they doesn't have job, that they are vulnerable for any kind of extremist activities which may culminate to the fall. So the other one is coordinating with multilateral institutions and member states as well, which we are working. So these are the mechanisms that we were doing as IGAD to support the mediation efforts of the member states, because we represent our member states and
All right.
we are for the member states. So that is the practical activities that we were doing. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Republic of Turkey, Burhanettin Duran, how would you evaluate Turkey-Africa partnership relations? Do you think Turkey's approach to African countries differs from other partners, and if so, why?
Well, thank you, Ms. Seda. First, I'd like to welcome you all to Antalya Diplomacy Forum. And we are very happy to see this great participation. Of course, Turkey has an integrated policy towards Africa, and this consists of four main dimensions. The first dimension is that we do support the economic development and capacity building needs of African countries. And the second one is we want to contribute to the security and stability of the continent. And the third dimension is about Turkey's facilitating and mediating role. And the fourth dimension is that we support collaboration, deep collaboration with the African institutions, African or regional organizations for, of course, finding African solution to African problems. So this aspect is very important because, you know, Africans will determine their future, and Africa as a rising continent, it has a very bright future. But at this time, Turkey has such a positive role, unique role, and this is just about seeing eye-to-eye relationship and acting as principled and vocal stance. So these are very important, and also I want to add another dimension that our President Erdogan has a vision, a perspective, recognizing Africa as a rising continent in the decades ahead, and this is very important for our understanding of partnership with Africa.
All right. Musalia Mudavadi, Prime Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs, Foreign and Diaspora Affairs, Republic of Kenya. What are the main drivers of political instability and conflict in the Horn of Africa, and what strategies can mitigate this risk? And I'm asking you this question because we've seen Kenya sort of like trying to play a brotherly role what we've seen in South Sudan. We're talking about also the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo, where Kenya also has a representative, the former president of Kenya, President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Thank you. First of all, let me just take 1 second to salute the President of Turkey and the government of Turkey for being very consistent in bringing up this particular forum. It gives us a good opportunity to exchange ideas, and we appreciate that. There are a lot of issues that generate conflict or problem in the regions, and perhaps we should look at it as the greater Horn of Africa, rather than looking at it as the Horn of Africa, because it's a much bigger space and involving more countries. There are some that are historical issues, some that emanate from how countries were demarcated, putting similar communities but in different areas, and then expecting them to completely fuse into that new arrangement. So there was dislocation from a historical perspective. Mm-hmm. Secondly, there's the question of resources. The Greater Horn of Africa has got a lot of resources, whether it is mineral resources, other natural resources, and these resources have attracted very many players some with good intentions, some with purely commercial intentions, and in the process, they do not necessarily look at the interests of the communities that reside there. And finally, I think we also have to anticipate that there are emerging challenges related to aspects like climate change and the impact of climate change, which is creating a lot of strain on the resources that are available and therefore generating conflict. But what is important is that we need, just to pick up from where the minister has mentioned and the other speakers, we need to really strengthen African institutions and African mechanisms for intervention. It's absolutely important, whether it is IGAD, whether it is the African Union, whether it is entities in Western Africa and other parts of the continent or Northern Africa. We need to strengthen and work with institutions that have been created by the member states on the African continent, whether it in terms of resourcing and so forth. This will help to avoid forum shopping, to avoid competing interests, and then we can have more unified approaches to matters peace.
All right. And Carl Scow, the Deputy Executive Director, Chief Operating Officer at the United Nations World Food Programme. As we speak now, what is the situation like in Somalia and other countries within the Horn of Africa?
Yeah, I will speak to the food security situation, and the short answer is that it's bad and it's getting worse. Food insecurity is on the increase in the greater Horn of Africa. We calculate right now some 60 million people being severely food insecure. About a third of that is in Sudan or driven by the Sudan crisis. The Sudan crisis is the worst from a food security point of view that we've seen in decades. It's really dramatic. Also with about 1 million people in the highest food insecure situation of starvation. The situation is driven basically by 3 factors. One is conflict, obviously, and insecurity. The second is extreme weather events, partly due to climate change. We've seen both floods and drought in the region in the past year, sometimes even in the same country at the same time. And thirdly, by economic shocks, not least inflation on food prices, which we are also concerned now with the ongoing trade wars can get even worse. So those are the drivers, and it's getting worse.
All right, just a follow-up question based on what you've said. Yes, you've talked about climate change, the issues that are affecting your work in the Horn of Africa. President Donald Trump recently, made a decision of aid cuts. Has it affected your work in the Horn of Africa? And if it has affected your work, what is the alternative for WFP?
I mean, we're working very closely with the governments of the region and institutions, IGAD and AU, trying to respond to this crisis. WFP is always on the front line. It's kind of with that operational touch, getting stuff done. And we work in development where we can, trying to promote self-reliance. But in some parts, we also need to do emergency humanitarian work. But also there, we try to promote local development by local procurements, working on resilience. The 2 big challenges for us, one is really access and security, not least in Sudan, but it goes beyond that. And the second is on funding. Which is on dropping. We are having a 40% drop in our funding from last year to this year, but it's not only USA, it's also Europe and other traditional donors, and so we're looking to diversify our funding, but also trying to see how we can work more efficiently and effectively, and that includes working closer with government, strengthening local capacity, and as I said, promoting local development beyond the humanitarian and emergency work that we do.
All right, and you're talking about strengthening these institutions. That's the same thing that the Cabinet Secretary for Foreign and Diaspora Affairs of the Republic of Kenya, Musalia Mudavadi, has mentioned. And then I would direct this question to Wokne Gebehu. What opportunities, because parties are talking about strengthening these institutions, strengthening IGAD, strengthening the African Union, but what opportunities exist for fostering regional integration, interdependency, and connectivity? And how can other regional actors support this entire process?
Thank you very much. Just to pick up what Prime Secretary has said, the role of the regional and continental actors. It's a very important point that we have a challenge now that I want to stress. Definitely, these regional mechanisms, continental mechanisms have their own deficits, challenges. But when we talk about the resolving the conflicts is competing with other mediators is a challenge. For example, I mentioned earlier the role of Turkey, which was very much closely working with us to resolve this, to diffuse this tension. But in some of the challenges that we are facing in the region, IGAD, African Union, it's very difficult to compete with other mechanisms. It should work a complementarity here. Complementarity on the mission and vision, and complementarity to resolve the things in spite of all, the interests. The point that you have mentioned here, that region is highly interconnected with a very big porous boundary, with the same community, and with the same challenges that the region is facing. So we cannot, resolve a problem of a country, or we cannot confine ourselves in a given country. That challenge is interdependent. For example, the Sudanese issue is now, it's not only a Sudanese. It's a regional, a continental, and beyond. So the South Sudan, the challenge that we are facing, in Somalia, the challenge we are facing, there is a coordination mechanism that will support to tackle these challenges. Rather, if we compete upon these things, it is going to be a divergence of interests, which will harm the activities and these things. So there is a platform, there is architecture there, and also, as we are working with African Union, the United Nations, and other multilateral institutions, and our friends from out of the region, like Turkey and European Union and others, that the coordination is the key word to resolve, and the regional and continental mechanisms are there to do so.
All right. And the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Republic of Turkey, every time I hear President Erdogan speak, he says that we respect the sovereignty of African countries. Anytime we step in to bring a solution, anytime we're stepping in to try and help them whenever they come to us. Given the current dynamics of change in the global and regional order, what kind of future awaits the Horn of Africa?
Well, for the future of Africa in general, and specifically for the future of Horn of Africa, of course, there are many challenges ahead. I mean, from migration issue to climate change, and still combating with the terrorism and development issues. But these are the critical issues. But on the other side, Africa with population, demographic issue, natural resources, connectivity issues, and also some new development areas, including agriculture, food issues, will have a bright future if there is a just, fair approach to Africa. Mm-hmm. That's why our President Erdogan echoes this issue, voices this issue of fair and just international system to criticize the existing UN institution and their position as Security Council. So we believe that there should be much more complementarity, mutual interest, and also together cooperation in different areas. That's why Turkey is just pursuing such an integrated policy towards Africa. To give an example, our mediation efforts regarding the issue of commercial sea access between Ethiopia and Somalia is a clear testament of an example of this. Trust and confidence is very important, and both countries have their trust and confidence in Turkey and our President Erdogan, and we are trying to prevent any conflict there and contribute to this process of finding a commercial access to the sea for Ethiopia, but also this is a developmental project for Somalia to bring investors to Somalia and to contribute to their security and also stability. So that's a perspective that is trusted so much, and we believe that Turkey will continue for this kind of affairs as being open to other third parties who are willing to contribute to the prosperity of Africa.
Right.
That's a very clear vision and perspective.
All right, and Musalia Mudavadi, then how would you describe, just based on what he said, how would you describe the role of the African Union in promoting peace and security in the African continent? And what is the role of, the African standby force in the APSA? Sorry for that.
Follow. I just want to say that there are a couple of points that are emerging from the conversation. First, let me just re-emphasize that we must be careful that we do not generate a new scramble for Africa that can generate more problems for us the way it was historically. Africans want to engage, and they want to engage meaningfully amongst themselves and with the rest of the world. This is absolutely fundamental. And therefore, it is essential that the institutions that have been created by the African countries are respected. Now, we have, for instance, the challenge in DRC. And I'm happy as I speak, my brother Teta Antonio is in the room from Angola, Minister from Angola. One of the issues we have been tackling is something to do with DRC, where Angola has been leading the Luanda process, and Kenya was leading the Nairobi process. The Luanda process focused on the dialogue between interstate, Rwanda and DRC. And the Nairobi component focused on DRC conversations, that is the Congolese people themselves. What we have done now, working as East African Community and working as SADC, we have merged the two processes. And the chief mediator from on the Luanda process is now our chair of the African Union, President Lorenzo. So he's now at an elevated position. But the joint effort that we are pushing is to make sure that we harmonize our approach to assisting the people of DRC find their common ground and be able to move forward jointly as one nation. So in this conversation, it may be of interest for the audience to know that the conversation that Turkey finished, and we are very happy they helped us to finish this, the conversation between Somalia and Ethiopia actually started in Nairobi in my office on the instruction of President Ruto that we get the two teams together, and we sat talking for 2 nights with my brother without sleep. We were having tea and everything in the office. And we didn't conclude, but Akie concluded it, all right? But the outcome is basically the same, that we wanted peace, we wanted the respect for the territorial integrity of Somalia, and we wanted to find a way that the two countries work together.
All right.
So the key issue is this. Let us also work and support the peace initiatives being generated by the Africans themselves. And then let us strengthen our own economic partnerships. You touched on the global events. We can't continue complaining about tariff challenges emanating from Washington, yet we ourselves on the African continent have our own internal tariffs that are making it so difficult for even neighbors to trade. So why don't we start by dismantling our own tariff structures and making them more flexible amongst
All right.
ourselves before we actually complain about others?
All right, thank you. Just before I open the floor to the audience to ask a question, let me ask this question to the State Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Federal Republic of Somalia, Ali Mohammed Omar. The whole tension between Ethiopia and Somalia back then, and I'm happy to say back then because Turkey brokered a deal. What are the prospects for resolving the Somaliland issue within the context of regional dynamics and international diplomacy?
My brother, Masali, the first meeting we had in his office for 2 days, and we were spending his office for almost 24 hours a day continuously, and we were very grateful to start that negotiation initially. Let me also say about Horn of Africa is in a very critical crossroad. We have both internal dynamics and also we have a rapidly growing geopolitical landscape. We have a choice to make. Either we will become a region with a conflict and proxy wars between external forces, or we will become a region that can harvest its potential and prosper in the future. So we are in a very delicate situation at this time. I hope we take the second route. I think we cooperate and find a way to prosper our young people, because we have a young potential. The whole region has almost 70% of the region's population are less than 30 years old. Start from Sudan to Ethiopia to Somalia to Kenya. So as leaders, we have to make a choice and we have to work for the betterment of the region. For the Somaliland is a part of Somalia. We have a very clear and unwavering. We are committed to the unity and sovereignty of Somalia. In Africa, in 1964, there was a discussion at the African Union in Cairo where Africans were discussing what should we do with the new borders that we have. Should we keep the colonial borders? Should we redefine our borders based on our ethnicity? Or should we collapse all borders and just create one African country? We choose the first one. We decided to keep the existing colonial borders. And that's why we have a lot of historical context, historical issues in Africa where the borders happen sometimes divide a families or clans or communities. But I think we have to look the future. We cannot look in the past. We have to look the future where we have to learn from it and we have to find a way to overcome and create the unity within the existing borders and work together and create a more cross-border trade, cross-border connectivity, interdependencies, where people don't desire to go back the historical issue, just look forward and compete in a more competitive world. I think Africa has, better to move that direction rather than stick with the colonial issue. I think the Somaliland issue will be resolved within the Somali context, and Somalia will lead that in a more constitutional discussion, and we are going through that process right now, and hopefully I think that issue will be behind our, in the near future. I thank you.
All right, thank you. The next session, that is the responder from the floor, will be done by Tunj, and even as Tunj takes over, I'd just like to ask this question in a minute to Carl. The sort of security issues that WFP staff face, And if you may give us the numbers in terms of probably those who've lost their lives within the Horn of Africa, and how you are actually working towards ensuring that every staff of WFP is safe.
Well, you know, it comes with some level of risk to work on the front lines that we always do, and some of that we accept, but indeed it's gotten worse over the past few years. And we had a terrible incident in the south of Sudan in December, where 3 of our staff members got killed, one of them of Kenyan national, with having the Deputy Prime Minister here. But I want to underline, there is this very intimate relationship between food security and stability and security. What I just pointed to, conflict certainly drives food insecurity, but food insecurity and hunger also drives conflict and instability. And it was in recognition of that relationship that we received the Nobel Peace Prize back in 21. It was for the committee to underline that intimate relationship. And so, while I completely agree here with the panel of the importance of having African leadership in finding conclusions to these conflicts, I completely agree on the need to bring the international community in behind those efforts, because right now there is too much fragmentation, and frankly I feel that the balance of force is now against peaceful resolution rather than in favor, and that needs to be addressed. But equally important then is to be addressing some of these development and food security aspects in parallel. That cannot wait until conflicts have been settled. And so in parallel, what is important is that we, as we invest energy and resource in moving the peace processes forward, we also make sure to deliver for the people. Obviously the most life-saving and urgent support first, but also putting the seeds for development and self-reliance in that. Like many have said here, there are huge opportunities, not least in the food sector. There is massive opportunity in the agricultural sector in all of Horn of Africa, and that's something that needs to be tapped into also as we build the agenda for the future.
All right, thank you. Let me hand it over to Tunj. Is he around?
Dear panelists and participants, thank you so much for this distinguished and fruitful discussion. It was very timely. And Turkey is seen a trusted and reliable partner and actor in the Horn of Africa, in the region, and also not just for Horn of Africa, also in the Africa, as we see at the Ankara process and after the Ankara Declaration. And its role in Somalia and mediation between Somalia shows this clearly. And Turkey support peace, build schools, hospitals, and listen to local people. Turkey takes its power from the ground, not just from the governments. So, and also, as you mentioned about the IGAD, IGAD is also doing important work. Early warning system is very important and very crucial. And peace efforts and regional cooperation also important. As our colleague from Kenya said, the region faces many deep problems, very crucial problems these days, especially in Sudan, in Somalia, in South Sudan, in Ethiopia as well, about the Tigray crisis. So there are old conflicts also in the region, resources struggles and outside power competition. And oftenly, local voices are ignored in somehow. And World Food Program also remind us that food insecurity is getting worse, especially in Sudan. And the war in Sudan makes this even harder. And also the Somalia is crucial about the food insecurity. So Somalia is also affected by conflict, hunger, and drought in some times. And we must not forget about the threat of the terrorism, especially to Al-Shabaab. At these days, that group, that terrorist group, like Al-Shabaab, still cause fear and instability in Somalia, also in the region. And this shows that security and peace must go together, and also the other topics. But the region also has a great hope, I believe. And it has strong cultures, a young population, and land for farming, as our deputy minister said. With a fair support to the Horn of Africa can grow, become stronger, I believe. And President Erdogan says we need a justice and sustainable system in all the world, not just for some regions, but especially in all the world. We need justice and we need sustainable process. So this means working together, not against each other. We need strong partnership that help real people and on the ground. It must help prevent new conflicts and support African-led solutions. Without local leadership, no outside efforts can succeed. And I have one question in total. So how can we make sure regional strategies focus more on people on the ground in the region, not just for the power? And how Turkey can help turn this to real action on the ground? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tunç. We have run out of time. I'll ask anyone from the panel who would like to respond to that question, but in less than 2 minutes, because we need to go for the official opening ceremony that is supposed to begin at exactly 3 p.m. So we need to be there before 3 p.m. You respond in a minute, then Musalia Mudavadi, you'll do the closing remarks.
Thank you very much. Quickly about the issue of the grassroots community. Yeah, it's a very critical point that all the panelists has mentioned this thing, the role of the youth, which is 70% of the, in terms of number, and most of them are, have a problem of employment. The second one is empowering the woman. So when we talk about actual empowerment in the grassroots, we should talk about these things. So to reach out to the community in the grassroots level, this is the place to work in coordinated efforts, either the national governments, regional multilateral organizations, international partners like the World Food Program and others. This is a place that we have to intervene. This is a place that really we have to change the scenarios that we are facing and to avoid any bad recruitment to this. For that, we need institutions, very important institutions, the government institutions, civil society institutions, which will help that empowerment. So these are some of the things that I have to mention.
All right.
Thank you.
Musalia Mudavadi, as we close our session.
Thank you. I'll just come to one point. Resources are scarce, resources are limited. Even from the international community, the resources are limited. So let us mainstream our efforts through recognized institutions that have structures like IGAD, the African Union, and others. Through that process, we shall be able to use our resources well and to have a more coordinated approach to conflict resolution and critical initiatives on the continent. Thank you.
Thank you. Musalia Wycliffe Mudavadi, Prime Cabinet Secretary for Foreign and Diaspora Affairs, Republic of Kenya. Thank you. And in Kenya, you say Asante Sana.
Asante sana.
Burhanettin Duran, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Republic of Turkey. In Turkey, we say Teşekkürler. Thank you for joining us. And Ali Mohammed Omar, State Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Federal Republic of Somalia. I know they also say Asante, but how do you say it in your language? Thank you, Waken Gebeyu, Executive Secretary, Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD. Thank you for your time. And the Deputy Executive Director and Chief Operating Officer, United Nations World Food Program, WFP, Carl Scout, thank you for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Feel free to leave as you go for the next session. My name is Brenda Zedaradido from TRT World.